When the CEO gave my $1 million project to an intern, I didn't argue. I just resigned and wiped the server. He thought I was just some replaceable IT guy. He forgot that my laptop logs every single external access. I didn't cry. I signed the paper, packed my desk, and smiled. Sight 1. I stared at the projector screen at the end of the conference room. My name was completely gone from the credits. Replaced by Chloe, an intern who'd been with the company for exactly 2 weeks. Uncle Richard, the CEO, and my actual biological uncle, was beaming. He clapped Chloe on the back right in front of the board of directors and our biggest clients. This entire core system architecture? All Chloe, he announced, soaking in the applause. We're proud to have such young, raw talent in this company. I sat at the far end of the table. I didn't slam my hands down. I didn't stand up and start an emotional low-class office screaming match. Sight 1. I quietly reached into my pocket, slipped my phone out, hit record. Chloe caught my eye. Her face was practically dripping with smug satisfaction. Then she opened her mouth, pulling the ultimate family guilt gaslighting card. Come on, big bro. You're established. Can't you just let your little cousin have this one win? We're family. Why do you have to be so transactional about everything? Sight 1. Uncle Richard shot me a cold, authoritative look. You've been working for me a long time, and I'll take care of you down the road. But Chloe needs the CTO title to build her resume. Hand over the master admin credentials to her by tonight. 80 hours a week. Slaving away from my uncle's startup. No bonuses. No time off. All of my sacrifice, traded away under the guise of family loyalty. Sight 1. My time as the family doormat officially ended at that exact second. I didn't say a single word. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out a crisp sheet of paper, and slid it across the table right to the CEO. My resignation letter. Signed and dated last night. I quit, I said. My voice was terrifyingly calm. Uncle Richard actually laughed out loud. You think this startup can't run without you? Chloe can manage this system 10 times better than you ever could. They honestly thought I was just some code monkey who could be easily replaced by a clueless nepotism hire. They forgot one tiny critical detail. That entire $1 million system was running completely on a private server I paid for out of my own pocket. The company didn't own a single legal right to it. I stood up, tossed my personal belongings into a cardboard box. I walked out of the corporate building, didn't look back, didn't shed a tear. The second I got into my car, I pulled out my phone, remote into the server root directory. I stared at the blinking red command line on the screen. Deactivate core server. My finger tapped the screen. Zero hesitation. Wiped. Sight 1. Their entire system went completely dark. Right before their massive make-or-break signing meeting with our investors, every single computer in that building was about to turn into a black screen of death. They wanted to play corporate family politics. I'm going to teach them what happens when you cut out the actual brain of the operation. My phone blew up before I even cleared the parking lot. Uncle Richard on the caller ID. I didn't answer. Hit decline. 2 seconds later. Another call. Decline. Then came the text messages. You ungrateful brat. Turn the server back on right now. The investors are in the lobby. Chloe doesn't have the login. You are ruining your cousin's career. Fix this or else. I pulled over to the side of the road. Parked under a street lamp. I didn't get angry. My heart rate didn't even go up. I clicked his contact. Hit block. Cold. Clean. Done. But Uncle Richard wasn't finished. He knew he couldn't break me at the office. So he did what every toxic family member does. He played the victim. He brought the drama home. Sight 1. 10 minutes later, my mother's name flashed on my screen. I answered. She was crying, sobbing into the receiver. How could you do this? She wailed. Your uncle just called your father. He says you stole Chloe's software. He says you're trying to destroy his business out of spite. The classic gaslighting. Sight 1. Looking back, this was always his playbook. Every time I asked for a contract, he told me I was being greedy. Every time I asked for my fair share, he said I was hurting the family. Mom, I said. My voice was a flat line. Listen to me. He says the police are going to get involved. She screamed over me. He wants to sue you. Just give Chloe the password, please. I didn't steal anything, I said. I built it. On my server. With my money. But he's your uncle, she cried. We're supposed to stick together. Stick together. That meant I do all the work and they take all the credit. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up the phone. I knew exactly what Uncle Richard was doing. He was running to the family group chat. He wanted to isolate me. He wanted to make me the villain before I could tell the truth. I opened the app. The chat was already exploding. 30 unread messages. Aunt Susan. I can't believe he would do this to his own cousin. Chloe worked so hard on that project. Cousin Brad. Unbelievable. This is what happens when you let jealousy ruin your mind. Uncle Richard. I treated him like a son. I gave him a job. And he stabs me in the back the day we sign our biggest deal. They were all falling for it. Chloe was playing the victim perfectly. She probably had tears in her eyes while wearing the designer shoes bought with the company credit card I funded. I didn't reply to the chat. Not yet. I didn't waste my breath typing a long emotional paragraph explaining my side. Audiences don't want to see a victim complain. They want to see a genius handle business. I opened my laptop, connected to my personal cloud storage. I pulled up 3 files. File 1. The server receipts. Paid by my personal credit card for the past 2 years. File 2. The timestamp code repository. It showed my digital signature on every single line of code. Chloe's name appeared 0 times. File 3. The audio recording from the conference room. Uncle Richard's voice clear as day, telling me to hand over my project so it could make Chloe's resume look good. I didn't send all of it. Not yet. You don't show your whole hand in the first round. I took a single screenshot of file 3. The audio waveform and the transcript text of Uncle Richard saying, Chloe needs the CTO title. Hand over the master admin credentials to her by tonight. I dropped the image into the family group chat. No caption. No explanation. Just the image. The chat went completely dead. The typing bubbles appeared. Then disappeared. Aunt Susan stopped talking. Cousin Brad stopped talking. Then Uncle Richard sent a private message. Delete that photo right now. You are crossing a line. I stared at his text. I smiled. He was trembling. I knew it. I typed my first and only response to him. See you at the investor meeting tomorrow morning. I shut the laptop. Locked it in my glove compartment. They thought they could use family pressure to steal my life's work. They thought I would break because my mother cried. They don't know who I am anymore. The compliant provider is dead. The specialist is awake. The investor meeting starts in exactly 12 hours. And I hold the keys to the kingdom. 9 a.m. The financial district. The glass skyscraper was cold. Elite. Just like the people inside it. I walked through the double doors of the 14th floor conference room. I was wearing a tailored suit, not my usual IT hoodie. Beside me was Mark, my IP attorney. He was carrying a sleek leather briefcase. Uncle Richard was already at the head of the mahogany table. Chloe was sitting right next to him, wearing a brand new blazer, looking like a fake executive. The 3 main venture capitalists from the Apex Fund were across from them. The room went dead silent the second the door clicked shut. Uncle Richard's face turned an ugly shade of red. The smug smile on Chloe's face instantly vanished. What are you doing here? Uncle Richard hissed, standing up so fast his leather chair rolled back. You don't work here anymore. Security. Get this man out of my room. He was panicking. I could see the sweat glisten on his forehead. I didn't move. I didn't get defensive. Mark stepped forward, unbuttoning his suit jacket. He placed his business card directly in front of the lead investor, a cold-faced man named Mr. Vance. My name is Mark Vance, no relation, from Vance & Associates Legal, Mark said, his voice dropping like an anchor. We represent the sole creator and legal copyright owner of the software you are about to purchase today. My client is here to protect his asset. Mr. Vance looked at the card. Then he looked at Uncle Richard. Richard, Mr. Vance said, his voice smooth and dangerous. What is this? You told us your tech stack was completely finalized and owned by your company. Uncle Richard forced a laugh. It sounded hollow. Fake. Mr. Vance, please. This is just family drama, Uncle Richard said. pointing a trembling finger at me. This is my nephew. We had an internal restructuring yesterday. He's just bitter because we promoted Chloe instead of him. He's trying to extort us. The classic victim play. Turning illegal theft into a petty family squabble site. 1. Chloe chimed in, her voice trembling but trying to sound confident. I wrote the core framework myself, Mr. Vance. My cousin is just an administrator. He doesn't even know the system architecture. I finally spoke. My voice was a calm, steady line. Chloe, I said, looking directly at her. If you wrote the core framework, tell Mr. Vance right now. What encryption algorithm did you use to secure the user data pipeline? The room went freezing cold. Chloe blinked. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. She looked at her father. She looked at the investors. She looked down at her fake executive notebook. It's a proprietary script, she stammered. It's an ACE 256-bit block cipher with a dynamic salt key, I said, not taking my eyes off her trembling hands. And you don't have the master key. Because I do. Mark opened his briefcase. He slid 4 thick, bound legal documents across the table. One for each investor. One for Uncle Richard. These are federal copyright registrations, Mark announced. Filed and approved. The system architecture belongs to my client personally. The code repositories belong to him. Your startup has 0 intellectual property on its balance sheet. Mr. Vance flipped through the pages. His face didn't change expression, but his eyes narrowed. Uncle Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is a lie. We use company resources. He used our office laptops. The server costs were billed to my personal Amex card for 24 months, I said, pulling out the printed financial statements. The office laptops were never used because your network didn't have the bandwidth. I built this from my apartment, on my own hardware. Mr. Vance closed the folder with a sharp snap. He looked at Uncle Richard. The friendly investor demeanor was gone. Now it was just pure predatory capitalism. Richard, Mr. Vance said, leaning forward. We came here today to sign a $2 million valuation sheet. But it looks like you're trying to sell us a hollow shell. Without this man's server, your app is just a broken website. Mr. Vance, we can fix this, Uncle Richard pleaded, his voice cracking. We can legally compel him. You can't compel a ghost, Mr. Vance interrupted. He stood up. The other 2 investors stood up with him. The deal is paused, Mr. Vance said. You have 48 hours to clear this title. If this software isn't legally yours by Thursday, Apex Fund is pulling out completely. And we will sue you for misrepresentation. The investors walked out. The heavy glass doors shut behind them. The room was silent again. Uncle Richard dropped back into his chair. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Chloe looked at me, tears of anger forming in her eyes. You ruined everything. The family is going to hate you for this. I picked up my briefcase. I looked at my uncle, then at my cousin. The family already hates me, I said. Now they just have a reason. I turned my back on them and walked out. They wanted to play corporate games using family rules. Now they have to play legal games using my rules. Thursday is in 2 days. And my price just went up. The countdown was ticking. 48 hours. That's all the Apex Fund gave Uncle Richard to fix the asset title. By Wednesday morning, the corporate bravado was completely gone. The legal reality was setting in. A startup with no intellectual property is just an expensive lease on an office space. At 2 p.m. my doorbell rang. I opened it. It wasn't Uncle Richard. It wasn't Chloe. It was my mother. She was holding a container of homemade lasagna. The universal family peace offering. The ultimate emotional lever. Behind her, parked at the curb, was Uncle Richard's Mercedes. He didn't even have the courage to step out of the car. He was hiding behind the tinted glass, watching. I let her in. She set the food on my kitchen counter, her hands shaking. Your uncle is ruined, she started, her voice breaking immediately. He's going to lose the house. The investors are going to sue him for fraud. Chloe has been crying in her room for 2 days straight. I stood by the window. I didn't look at the food. I kept my eyes on the Mercedes outside. He made a mistake, she pleaded, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a legal document. Look, He wants to make it right. He's offering you 50% of the startup, co-founder status, a real salary. All you have to do is log back into the server, restore the database, and sign a co-ownership agreement with Chloe. Co-ownership. Still trying to keep Chloe's name attached to my brain. Still trying to dilute my worth. I didn't take the paper from her hand. Mom, I said, my voice dead calm. Did Richard tell you why the Apex Fund was giving him $2 million? Because of the software, she said, blinking. The software you guys built. The software I built, I corrected her. And did he tell you about the company debt? She froze. This is the part they always hide. Toxic family businesses don't just exploit your labor. They exploit your ignorance. I walked over to my desk, opened my laptop. I didn't show her code. I showed her the company's internal accounting logs, files I backed up before I wiped the server. Look at the line items from last month, I said, pointing at the screen. Chloe's corporate credit card. $20,000 for client dinners at high-end designer boutiques. Uncle Richard's personal loan account. $150,000 taken out against the company's future valuation to pay off his personal country club debts. The company is $600,000 in debt, Mom, I said flatly. If I sign that co-ownership paper, I don't inherit 50% of a tech company. I inherit $300,000 of Uncle Richard's personal liability. He's not offering me a partnership. He's looking for a co-signer for his bankruptcy. My mother stared at the screen. The color completely drained from her face. She wasn't a businesswoman, but she knew what debt looked like. She realized in that exact second that her brother had used her as a human shield to deliver a financial death sentence to her own son. He told me it was a guaranteed success, she whispered. He lied, I said. He always lies. I closed the laptop. Take the contract back to the car, I told her. Tell Richard the price isn't 50% anymore. The price is his resignation. I want him off the board. I want Chloe out of the building. And I want full 100% ownership of the corporate entity. He will never agree to that, she said, looking out the window at the Mercedes. His ego won't allow it. Then by Thursday at 9 a.m. the Apex Fund pulls out, I said. And the hedge fund lawyers will do to him what I didn't have the heart to do. My mother picked up the contract. She didn't cry this time. The gaslighting had lost its power. She walked out the door and got into the passenger seat of the Mercedes. Through the window, I watched the shadow of Uncle Richard waving his arms in anger as she spoke to him. Then the car sped away, tires screeching. They thought family loyalty meant blind obedience. They thought my expertise could be bought back with 50% of a ghost. Uncle Richard's ego is fighting against a prison sentence. And I'm just sitting here watching the clock. Wednesday night, 11:30 p.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A red notification on my server dashboard. Critical alert. Unauthorized access attempt. Someone was trying to bypass the AES-256 encryption. They were using a cheap proxy bouncing script. It was amateur hour. I checked the logs. The proxy was bouncing through Eastern Europe, but the script was clumsy. It leaked the originating IP and device footprint. It matched Chloe's home network perfectly. Uncle Richard was backed into a corner. He knew my mother failed to manipulate me. He knew his ego wouldn't let him resign. So he chose a felony. He tried to steal the intellectual property electronically. I watched the command line run for exactly 30 seconds. Then I tapped one button on my phone. Asterisk ban IP address. Lock network. Asterisk the breach went dead. I put my phone down and went to sleep. I slept perfectly. Thursday, 8:45 a.m. 15 minutes before the Apex Fund deadline. I was already sitting in the glass-walled lobby of the venture capital firm. Beside me was Mark, my IP attorney. Across from us sat Mr. Vance, the lead investor. We were drinking black coffee. At 8:50 a.m. the elevator doors opened. Uncle Richard and Chloe walked out. They looked completely destroyed. Richard's expensive suit was wrinkled. He had dark bags under his eyes. Chloe wasn't wearing her fake executive blazer anymore. She looked like a terrified college student. They saw me sitting next to Mr. Vance. Richard's face dropped. He walked over slowly. His hands were shaking. He pulled a manila folder from his briefcase and pushed it across the glass table toward me. "You win," Richard said. His voice was a raspy whisper. "The resignation papers. The transfer of equity. Everything you asked for yesterday. I step down, Chloe is terminated, and you get 100% of the corporate entity. Just turn the server back on so Mr. Vance can sign the funding deal." Chloe looked down at the floor, biting her lip to stop from crying. They thought they were making the ultimate sacrifice. They thought giving me a company with $600,000 in toxic debt was a prize. I looked at the manila folder. I didn't touch it. "I don't want your company, Richard," I said. Richard blinked. The confusion washed over his face. "What? That was your demand. You said you wanted the company." "That was yesterday's price," I replied, my voice completely flat. "Before you tried to hack my server at 11:30 last night." I slid a printed sheet of paper across the table. The IP and device footprint logs. Richard stared at the paper. The last drop of color left his face. He knew that piece of paper was a one-way ticket to federal prison for corporate espionage. "Mr. Vance and I had a very productive breakfast this morning," I continued. Mark, my lawyer, opened his briefcase. He pulled out a fresh, newly printed contract. It had the Apex Fund logo at the top. "My client registered a brand new LLC yesterday afternoon," Mark explained, his tone clinical and sharp. "Mr. Vance is not investing in your startup, Richard. He is signing a direct, exclusive licensing agreement with my client's new company. Apex Fund gets the software. My client gets the $2 million valuation. And you," Mr. Vance said, looking at Richard with absolute disgust, "get nothing." Richard stumbled backward. He hit the edge of the lobby sofa. "You can't do this," Richard yelled, his voice cracking with panic. "I have creditors. I have a lease. I took out $150,000 against this deal. If you take the software, I am bankrupt. Then you better start updating your resume," I said. Chloe couldn't hold it in anymore. She started sobbing, realizing her designer lifestyle and corporate credit cards were officially dead. "We're family," she cried, wiping her eyes. "How can you be so cold?" I stood up. I buttoned my suit jacket. "You were my boss, Chloe," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "I'm just an intern who resigned. Remember?" I shook Mr. Vance's hand. I walked out of the glass lobby, leaving my uncle and my cousin standing in the ashes of their own greed. They played the game of manipulation. I played the game of ownership. And the server? It's running perfectly. Just not for them. 2 weeks. That's exactly how long it took for a hollow-tech startup to bleed to death. I was sitting in my new corner office. My name was on the frosted glass door. No uncle. No cousin. Just the CEO. My phone vibrated on the mahogany desk. The family group chat. It had been completely silent since I dropped the audio recording of Uncle Richard demanding my project. Now it was blowing up again. I opened the app. Uncle Richard was typing paragraphs. Desperate, frantic paragraphs. "I need everyone to come together. The corporate creditors are freezing my personal accounts. They are going to foreclose on the house. We need to protect the family legacy. If everyone chips in $10,000, I can hire a restructuring lawyer and sue my nephew to get our software back." The absolute audacity. Still playing the victim. Still trying to gaslight his own siblings into paying for his financial failures. Aunt Susan replied first. "Richard, I already gave you $50,000 from my retirement fund last year. You said the company was a guaranteed success. Where did that money go?" Cousin Brad chimed in right after. "Yeah, Uncle Rich. You told us the funding was totally secure. You said your new CTO Chloe had everything under control." They were finally waking up. The spell was breaking. But Uncle Richard couldn't help himself. He doubled down on the lie. The money went into research and development. Richard texted. "It went into the servers. But my nephew sabotaged us at the finish line. He stole the company's future. We have to fight him. He was trying to make me the common enemy." Again. I didn't type a long emotional defense. I didn't get angry. Audiences don't respect a winner who complains. I opened my cloud drive. I selected the corporate audit file I backed up before wiping the server. The internal accounting log. I filtered the spreadsheet to highlight exactly where Aunt Susan's $50,000 went. Line item: $12,000 to a luxury car dealership for a down payment on Richard's Mercedes. Line item: $8,500 to a high-end country club for Richard's executive golf membership. Line item: $18,000 on Chloe's corporate card for designer handbags and luxury spa retreats labeled as client meetings. Not a single dollar went into research and development. Not a single dollar went into my server architecture. I exported the highlighted page as a clean PDF document. I dropped the file into the family group chat. No caption. No explanation. Just the raw, undeniable data. The chat went dead silent. I watched the read receipts pop up one by one. Aunt Susan read it. Brad read it. My mother read it. 3 minutes passed. Then the explosion happened. Aunt Susan: "You bought your daughter a Chanel bag with my retirement money?" Brad: "A country club membership? Are you kidding me, Richard?" My mother: "Richard, how could you do this to your own sister?" Uncle Richard didn't reply. The typing bubble appeared for a second, then vanished permanently. He had nowhere left to hide. The victim card was officially declined. An hour later, my IP lawyer Mark called me. "Just keeping you updated," Mark said, his voice crisp and professional. "The bankruptcy court just appointed a liquidator for your uncle's LLC. They are seizing the office assets today. Also, I forwarded the server breach logs to the Federal Cybercrime Division. The FBI is opening a preliminary investigation into his unauthorized hacking attempt." "Understood," I said. "What about Chloe?" "She tried to apply for a senior systems architect role at a rival tech firm," Mark replied, chuckling slightly. "They ran a background check and asked for a portfolio. She couldn't produce a single line of original code. She's been blacklisted by every major tech recruiter in the city. I heard she's applying for a barista job downtown." "Good. Keep me posted, Mark." I hung up the phone. I looked out the window of my new office, overlooking the financial district. For years, I let the concept of family chain me to a desk, working 80 hours a week for a man who saw me as nothing but a tool. They told me I was selfish for wanting my fair share. They told me I was ruining the family for protecting my own property. They were right about one thing. I did ruin them. But I didn't use lies or manipulation to do it. I just used the truth. I opened the family group chat one last time. I swiped left on the conversation. Delete and leave group. I walked out of my office and headed to the boardroom. My engineering team was waiting for me. We had a $2 million software to launch. And this time my name is the only one on the patent site. 6 weeks. The dust had finally settled. My new company was thriving. We had 30 employees on the payroll. I was sitting in my corner office reviewing a quarterly projection when my IP attorney Mark walked in. He didn't knock. He just handed me a manila folder. "It's official," Mark said, his tone clinical. "The Federal Cybercrime Division just served Richard. They raided his home office this morning. They took his hard drives. He's facing 3 counts of wire fraud and unauthorized access to a protected computer network." I opened the folder. Looked at the federal indictment. "Any chance of a plea deal?" I asked. "Only if he cooperates and pays restitution," Mark replied. "But his bank accounts are frozen. He has nothing left to negotiate with." My phone started ringing on the desk. I looked at the caller ID. It was my grandmother. She hadn't called me in 3 years. Not for my birthday. Not when I launched my first app. But now, with her favorite son facing federal prison, I was suddenly on her radar. I picked up the phone. Pressed accept. "Hello, Grandma." She didn't say hello. She went straight for the emotional jugular. The ultimate family gaslighting playbook. "You are destroying this family." Her voice cracked over the speaker. "Your uncle is having a panic attack. The police took his computers. How can you be so cruel to your own flesh and blood?" I leaned back in my leather chair. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get defensive. "I didn't call the FBI, Grandma," I said smoothly. The automated security protocol on my server flagged his IP address when he tried to hack my system at midnight. The federal government stepped in because he committed a felony across state lines. "He made a mistake," she wailed, playing the victim card for him. "He was desperate. You have millions of dollars now. You have everything. Call the police and tell them you forgive him. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. They always expect the provider to fold. They always expect the person they stepped on to turn around and offer a hand. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said. It was theft. And the FBI doesn't drop federal indictments just because the suspect's mother asked nicely. If you don't stop this, you are no longer my grandson, she threatened. The final manipulation tactic. Disownment. Okay. Have a good afternoon, ma'am. I hung up the phone. Blocked the number. The blood tie was permanently severed. I felt absolutely nothing. No guilt. No sadness. Just the quiet peace of a clean ledger. But the day wasn't over. 10 minutes later, the intercom on my desk buzzed. It was my lobby security guard. Sir, there's a young woman down here causing a scene. She says she's your cousin. She's demanding to see you. Send her up, I said. But have security escort her. 2 minutes later, the glass doors to my office opened. Chloe walked in. The security guard stood 2 feet behind her. She looked entirely different. The smug, fake executive from the investor meeting was gone. She was wearing a faded jacket. No designer makeup. Her hands were shaking. She had been fired from her barista job, blacklisted from the tech industry, evicted from her luxury apartment because her father's corporate card was seized by the bankruptcy court. She looked at my mahogany desk. She looked at the panoramic view of the city. Then she started to cry. Please, Chloe sobbed, stepping forward. The security guard put a hand out to stop her. Please, I have absolutely nothing left. My dad is facing jail. I can't pay my rent. Just give me a job. Data entry. Reception. Sweeping the floors. I don't care. We're family. There it was again. We're family. The toxic shield they used to excuse their own incompetence. I stood up. I didn't feel an ounce of pity. You had a $20,000 corporate expense account last month, Chloe, I said, my voice cutting through her tears like ice. You bought Chanel bags and spa weekends using my code as leverage. I was stupid, she cried. My dad told me to do it. And you enjoyed every second of it while you tried to fire me, I reminded her. I opened my desk drawer. I pulled out a single sheet of paper and slid it across the desk toward her. She looked at it. It wasn't an employment contract. It was an invoice. This is the cybersecurity audit bill for the damage your father caused when he tried to brute force my server, I said. $15,000. Since you were listed as the co-founder on his LLC paperwork, you are legally liable for half. Chloe stared at the invoice. The tears stopped. Her face went completely blank with horror. I don't hire liabilities, Chloe, I said, sitting back down and turning my attention to my computer monitor. I sue them. I looked at the security guard. Escort her out of the building. If she returns, call the police for trespassing. Chloe didn't say another word. The reality had finally crushed her ego. She turned around and walked out, clutching the $15,000 invoice in her shaking hands. They wanted to play CEO. They wanted the title, the money, and the glory. Now they get to pay the bill. 3 months. That's how long it took for Uncle Richard's ego to blind him to reality. He was out on bail, living in a cheap rented apartment. But he refused to take a plea deal. Instead, he decided to go on the offensive. I was sitting in a sterile white-walled deposition room downtown. Across the long wooden table sat Uncle Richard. He was wearing an ill-fitting suit. He looked exhausted, but his eyes still had that toxic, arrogant glare. Next to him was a discount defense attorney he probably hired off a billboard. Beside me was Mark, my intellectual property lawyer. Calm, expensive, lethal. The deposition started. Richard's lawyer immediately slid a piece of paper across the table. This is an employment and non-disclosure agreement, the sleazy lawyer said, tapping the paper. Signed by your client 2 years ago. It clearly states that any software developed while working under Richard's LLC is the sole property of the company. Your client committed corporate sabotage. I looked at the paper. It was a complete forgery. My signature was traced. The date was backdated. Richard leaned forward, a smug, desperate smile creeping onto his face. Drop the federal charges, Richard sneered, playing his final extortion card. Drop them, give me back my software license, and I'll drop this civil suit. We can keep this in the family. Like we always do. Gaslighting until the very bitter end. Didn't get angry. I didn't shout that it was a fake. I just looked at Mark and nodded. We won't be dropping anything, Mark said smoothly, ignoring the forged document completely. In fact, we brought a witness today to clarify exactly how this company operated. Mark opened the conference room door. Chloe walked in. Richard's smug smile vanished instantly. The color drained from his face. She looked pale, wearing a plain gray sweater. She didn't look at her father. She walked straight to the empty chair on our side of the table and sat down. What is she doing here? Richard demanded, his voice cracking. Chloe, what are you doing? Mark pulled a thick stack of printed text messages from his briefcase. 2 days ago, Chloe received a formal invoice from my client for $15,000 in cybersecurity damages, Mark explained, sliding the texts onto the table. Facing personal bankruptcy and potential accessory charges for the server hack, she decided to seek her own legal counsel. She signed an immunity affidavit this morning. Richard stared at his daughter in absolute horror. Chloe provided us with her personal iCloud backups, Mark continued, his voice cold and rhythmic. Including these text messages from you, Richard. Time-stamped on the night of the server breach. I read the highlighted text message out loud. 11:15 p.m. Richard to Chloe. I found a freelancer on the dark web. I'm going to brute force his server. Delete all your texts and pretend you don't know anything. The room went completely silent. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound. Richard's chief defense attorney slowly pushed his chair back from the table. He looked at the forged contract, then at the text messages. Submitting a forged document was perjury. He knew his client had just dragged him into a federal crime. Chloe, Richard whispered, his voice trembling with rage and disbelief. I am your father. I did this for you. I did this for our family. The ultimate victim player. Chloe finally looked at him. Her eyes were completely dead. You didn't do this for me, Dad, she said coldly. You used me. You told me I was the CTO just so you could steal his code. Now I'm blacklisted from the entire industry, and you expect me to go to jail for you? I'm done. She turned her back on him. The alliance of hatred was broken. When toxic people run out of victims, they devour each other. Richard's attorney stood up, packing his briefcase with frantic speed. This deposition is over, the attorney stammered. I am formally withdrawing as defense counsel for this civil suit, effective immediately. Richard was left sitting entirely alone. No lawyer. No company. No daughter. I stood up. I buttoned my suit jacket. I looked down at the man who used to call me family. The federal prosecutor has a copy of those texts, Richard, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The plea deal is off the table. Have fun at the trial. I walked out of the room. I didn't look back. Family is supposed to have your back. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is let them stab each other in theirs. 6 months. The wheels of federal justice turn slowly, but they grind perfectly fine. I sat in the second row of the federal courthouse. The room was sterile. Cold oak and bright fluorescent lights. Uncle Richard sat at the defense table. He looked unrecognizable. His hair was thinning. His posture was completely broken. He was wearing an ill-fitting gray suit. The expensive country club CEO was gone. Now he was just a desperate man trying to avoid a concrete cell. His discount defense attorney had quit months ago. He was sitting next to a court-appointed public defender. Chloe wasn't there. Aunt Susan wasn't there. My grandmother wasn't there. When a toxic manipulator runs out of money, they run out of an audience. The family had completely abandoned him. The judge looked down from the bench, adjusting his glasses. The defendant has pled guilty to 1 count of unauthorized access to a protected computer network, and 1 count of attempted wire fraud, the judge announced, his voice echoing in the quiet room. Does the defense have anything to add before sentencing? The public defender stood up. Your Honor, my client is a first-time offender, the lawyer pleaded. This was not a malicious corporate attack. This was a family business dispute that got out of hand. He is deeply remorseful. We ask for a lenient sentence of probation and community service. Uncle Richard turned around in his chair. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, begging. He mouthed the words, "I'm sorry, the ultimate victim player. Even now, facing federal prison." He was trying to gaslight the court into thinking this was just a family squabble over a Thanksgiving dinner. The judge looked at the prosecutor. "Does the victim wish to make a statement?" I stood up. I buttoned my tailored suit jacket. I walked past Uncle Richard without breaking my stride. I stepped up to the wooden podium. I didn't bring a tissue. I didn't write an emotional speech about how much he hurt me. Audiences don't respect tears. They respect facts. I pulled a single piece of paper from my inside pocket. "Your Honor," I said, my voice completely flat and calm. "Richard didn't make a mistake. He executed a calculated financial strategy." I didn't look at my uncle. I looked directly at the judge. When he hired a hacker to brute force my server at midnight, he wasn't trying to resolve a family dispute. He was attempting to secure a stolen software architecture to defraud the Apex hedge fund out of $2 million. The courtroom was dead silent. "He didn't act out of desperation," I continued, reading from my sheet. "The day before he tried to steal my intellectual property, his corporate account showed a $12,000 down payment on a luxury vehicle and an $8,000 golf club membership." I placed the financial audit summary on the judge's bench. He used the concept of family to mask his extortion. He used his own daughter as a human shield to avoid liability. He is not remorseful because he broke the law. He is remorseful because his IP address was logged. I stepped back from the podium. "I am not asking for revenge, Your Honor. I am asking for mathematics. He attempted to steal $2 million. I asked that the court sentence him accordingly." I turned around and walked back to my seat. Uncle Richard's face was completely drained of blood. He looked like a ghost. He knew his family dispute defense was just shattered by cold, hard accounting. The judge looked at the financial summary. He adjusted his glasses again. "The court does not view premeditated corporate espionage as a family matter," the judge said, his voice dropping like an anvil. "The defendant used his familial authority to exploit, manipulate, and attempt to defraud both the victim and a financial institution." The judge picked up his wooden gavel. "Richard, I sentence you to 48 months in a federal correctional facility. No possibility of early parole. You are remanded into the custody of the U.S. Marshals." Bang. The gavel hit the wood. The sound was deafening. Two armed bailiffs walked up to Uncle Richard. They told him to put his hands behind his back. The metal handcuffs clicked over his wrists. He didn't look back at me as they led him through the side door. He kept his head down. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining. The air felt incredibly clean. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Mark, my IP attorney. "How did it go?" Mark asked. 48 months, I replied. "Perfect timing," Mark said. "Apex Fund just wired the second phase of our licensing agreement. The server is scaled up. We are expanding to Europe next week. Send the contracts to my office," I said. "I'll sign them this afternoon." I got into my car. Started the engine. They told me I was selfish. They told me I owed them my future because of my last name. They were wrong. Loyalty isn't inherited. It's earned. And the only thing I owe my uncle now is the cost of a stamp, if I ever decide to reply to his prison letters. Which I won't cite. 6 months into his sentence, my company had fully scaled. The European market was next. I was sitting in my corner office looking at the global expansion map when my IP attorney, Mark, called me. "Have you seen the press release from Vanguard Tech?" Mark asked. His voice wasn't panicked, but it was sharp. Vanguard Tech was a massive, aggressive tech firm based in Berlin. They were our only real competition for the European contracts. I opened my laptop and pulled up the financial news. The headline read, Vanguard Tech announces revolutionary encryption algorithm, launching live this Friday. I clicked on the article. There was a photo of the Vanguard CEO shaking hands with his new lead overseas consultant. It was Chloe. She was back in a designer blazer, smiling for the cameras. She looked like she had just won the lottery. "She found an old backup drive at Richard's house," Mark said over the phone. "She approached Vanguard 2 months ago. They hated you for taking the Apex Fund deal, so they partnered with her. They are using your old code to undercut our European launch. Are they? Launching the exact beta build? I asked. Line for line, Mark replied. Should I draft the federal injunction and shut the launch down? I looked at Chloe's smug face on the screen. She thought she had finally outsmarted me. She thought she had found a backdoor to the luxury corporate lifestyle she felt entitled to. No, I said, my voice completely flat. Don't send any legal notices. Let them launch it. Mark was silent for a second. You want a rival company to launch your stolen software? It's the beta version, Mark, I said. It has a dependency loop. It requires a live ping to my master server to authenticate the decryption keys. Without my server, the code is just a ticking time bomb. Understood, Mark said. I could hear the smile in his voice. I hung up the phone. I didn't throw a tantrum in my office. I just opened my airline app and booked a flight to Germany. Friday morning. Berlin. The Vanguard Tech launch event was massive. Thousands of investors, tech journalists, and industry leaders were packed into a sleek, dark auditorium. I walked through the VIP entrance. I took a seat in the fourth row, blending in with the crowd. The lights dimmed. The Vanguard CEO walked onto the stage. The crowd applauded. Today we revolutionize data security, the CEO announced proudly. And we couldn't have done it without our brilliant new lead consultant, who brought this framework across the Atlantic. Chloe walked out onto the stage. The spotlights hit her. She waved to the crowd, soaking in the stolen glory. She was playing the genius, taking credit for my 80-hour work weeks all over again. Let's run the live demo, the CEO said, pointing to the massive screen behind them. The Vanguard technical team initiated the software. The loading bar appeared on the 50-foot screen. 10%, 40%, 80%. I reached into my suit jacket. I pulled out my phone. I opened my master server dashboard. I saw the incoming ping request from Vanguard's IP address. They were trying to authenticate the stolen code. My thumb hovered over the screen. Block IP address. I tapped the screen. On stage, the loading bar hit 99%. And then it froze. The massive screen flickered. A harsh, loud error buzzer echoed through the auditorium speakers. The entire 50-foot display turned blood red. A single line of text appeared in bold, white letters across the screen for thousands of investors to read. Asterisk fatal error. Unauthorized stolen beta code detected. Intellectual property of my name LZ. Asterisk the auditorium erupted into whispers. Camera flashes started going off like lightning. Journalists were instantly typing on their laptops. The Vanguard CEO stared at the screen. The color completely drained from his face. He looked at Chloe in absolute horror. Chloe stepped back. Her hands started trembling. She looked out into the crowd, her eyes wide with panic. That's when she saw me, sitting in the fourth row. I didn't smirk. I didn't wave. I just looked at her with absolute freezing silence. She dropped her microphone. The feedback shrieked through the speakers. Vanguard Tech stock price dropped 14% before the launch event was even over. They didn't just humiliate themselves on a global stage. They publicly broadcasted a corporate crime. My phone buzzed as I walked out of the auditorium. It was Mark. Vanguard's legal team just called me panicking, Mark said. They are firing Chloe immediately and want to settle out of court to avoid a multinational IP lawsuit. Tell them the settlement is $20 million, I replied. And tell them Chloe is personally indemnified from the settlement. We are suing her individually for corporate espionage. She'll be in debt for the rest of her life, Mark noted. She wanted to play the corporate game, I said, stepping out into the cold Berlin air. I'm just making sure she pays the entry fee. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for the reality of corporate espionage to crush her. 3 weeks after I publicly destroyed her stolen software launch in Berlin, Chloe's work visa was immediately revoked. Vanguard Tech fired her, froze her corporate accounts, and she was forced to flee back to the United States. She was facing a $5 million lawsuit and up to 10 years in federal prison. I was walking through the marble lobby of my new headquarters. It was 8 a.m. I saw a figure sitting on the leather bench near the security desk. It was Chloe. She looked absolutely nothing like the arrogant, designer-wearing fake executive who tried to steal my life's work. She was wearing a faded gray hoodie. Her hair was a mess. She looked completely hollowed out. When she saw me walking toward the private elevators, she jumped. She bypassed security and ran directly toward me. "Please," Chloe yelled, her voice echoing off the marble walls. My security guards instantly moved to intercept her, but I held up a hand. I signaled them to stop. I wanted to hear this. She stopped 3 feet away from me. She was hyperventilating. "You took everything," she sobbed, the tears streaming down her face. "Vanguard fired me. My bank accounts are seized. I have a $5 million civil suit sitting on my kitchen table, and the FBI left a card on my door yesterday. I'm going to end up in a cell next to my dad." Even now, she was trying to play the victim. She was trying to gaslight me into feeling guilty for the consequences of her own theft site. I didn't yell. I didn't tell her how much she had hurt me. "You sold stolen intellectual property to a foreign competitor, Chloe," I said, my voice completely flat and emotionless. "Actions have legal receipts. We are family," she wailed, her knees literally giving out. She dropped to the floor. Right in the middle of the corporate lobby. She grabbed the edge of my suit jacket, kneeling and crying hysterically. "Please, I am begging you," she cried. "Tell your lawyers to drop the lawsuit. Tell the FBI you won't testify. I will do anything. I have nothing left." Audiences don't want to see a protagonist get emotional over a bully's tears. They want to see a genius execute a flawless technical trap. I looked down at her. I didn't pull away. I just looked at her trembling hands. Mark, my IP attorney, stepped out from the elevator bay behind me. He was holding a sleek black clipboard. I took the clipboard from Mark. I looked down at Chloe. "I am not going to send you to federal prison, Chloe," I said calmly. "I don't want my taxes paying for your meals." She looked up, a glimmer of desperate hope flashing in her eyes. "Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. But I am not dropping the civil suit," I interrupted. The hope in her eyes instantly vanished. I held out the clipboard and a silver pen. "This is a legally binding confession of corporate espionage and intellectual property theft," I explained, my voice dropping to a clinical whisper. "It completely clears my company of any liability and secures my $20 million settlement with Vanguard Tech." She stared at the paper. "Attached to it is a lifelong wage garnishment agreement," I continued. "It is a non-dischargeable debt. You will not go to jail. But you owe me $5 million. I will legally take 30% of every single paycheck you earn until it is paid in full, even if it takes the rest of your life." Chloe's mouth opened but no sound came out. She realized the trap was completely inescapable. "You want to stay out of a cell?" I asked. "Sign it." She looked at the marble floor. She looked at the security guards watching her. She was completely isolated. The alliance of hatred she built with her father was dead. With a shaking, trembling hand she took the pen. She signed her name at the bottom of the page. I took the clipboard back. I didn't say another word. I didn't smile. I turned around and walked into the glass elevator. The doors slid shut, leaving her kneeling alone in the lobby. She wanted the title of a millionaire tech executive. She wanted to steal my algorithm to buy designer bags. Now, she gets to work minimum wage for the next 40 years. And every time she cashes a check, my name will be on the deduction line. Absolute silence of a person holding the ultimate leverage. 1 year later, 8 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office, looking out over the city skyline. My company had just surpassed a $50 million valuation. I had over 100 employees on the payroll. Our European expansion was flawless. I was the sole founder, the sole CEO, and the sole owner of the intellectual property. My assistant walked in and placed the morning mail on my mahogany desk. Right on top was a yellow envelope, stamped by the federal prison mail system. It was from Richard. Picked it up. I didn't feel my heart race. I didn't feel anger. I just felt a profound, absolute emptiness toward the man who used to be my uncle. I opened the letter. It was written in blue pen, his handwriting shaky and desperate. "I am sorry," the letter began. "I have lost everything. The food here is terrible. I sleep on a steel bunk. I spend every day thinking about the startup and how we used to be a family. Gaslighting. Even from behind bars he was trying to rewrite history. We were never a family. We were a toxic hierarchy where I did all the work and he took all the credit. The letter continued. Please, I am begging you to show some mercy to Chloe. She is working 2 minimum wage shifts at a diner. Every time she gets paid, your legal team automatically garnishes 30% of her check. She can barely afford rent. Be the bigger person. Drop the garnishment. You are a millionaire now. You don't need her money. Let this go. I stared at those words. Be the bigger person. It is the ultimate weapon of the toxic abuser. When they have all the power, they tell you to compromise. When they lose all the power, they tell you to be the bigger person. I looked at the notification on my phone. An automated payroll receipt from my legal team. Chloe's bi-weekly garnishment had cleared. $412 transferred directly into my corporate holding account. I don't need her $400. That's not the point. The point is the permanent legal consequence of corporate espionage. The point is accountability site. One, I didn't grab a pen to write him back. I didn't call the prison to gloat. I held the yellow piece of paper in my hand, walked over to the heavy-duty paper shredder in the corner of my office, and fed it into the blades. The machine hummed. The letter was destroyed in 3 seconds. Just like that, the last remaining thread connecting me to that toxic bloodline was severed forever sight. I walked out of my private office and looked at my engineering floor. Dozens of brilliant, hardworking people collaborating on our next big update. Nobody here called me family to manipulate me into working 80 hours for free. They called me boss because we had a mutual contract built on absolute respect, fair pay, and boundaries. For all of my 20s, I thought being the provider meant setting myself on fire to keep my relatives warm. I thought if I just worked hard enough, if I just gave them my $1 million code, they would finally respect me. I was wrong. Some people don't love you. They only love what they can extract from you. And the moment you set a boundary, the moment you protect your own dignity, you become the villain. Somewhere in a federal prison, Uncle Richard is telling his cellmates that I am a ruthless, greedy nephew who ruined his life. Somewhere in a diner downtown, Chloe is telling her coworkers that I am a heartless monster who stole her corporate future. And you know what? Let them talk. Let them tell whatever story helps them sleep at night. Because as I look at my company, my life, and the absolute peace in my mind, I have finally realized the ultimate truth of workplace drama and toxic family. I would much rather be the villain in their delusional story than remain the victim in my own reality site. The game is officially over. And I won.